Great. Well, I've been checking out all your stuff. I love it. Love it all. You've
Oh,
really got
thanks so much.
you've got a catalog there.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
more to come too.
Oh yeah. What are you working on at the moment?
Working on a new, so you mentioned the Rocket Boys. I also have kind of a solo, more Americana singer-songwritery side to me that's called The Wealthy West. And then
Right.
been doing a lot of like instrumental stuff. I don't know. Some people keep telling me I need to release it, but it's more just been practice and fun to just mess around for no purpose, you know?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, making
So
music is what it should be. Yeah. Often it
yeah,
can become
so
work. No, we kind of get stuck on a treadmill and
mhm.
trying to fit in that box. But because you also do some TV and film, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So I've been very lucky to be able to work on a lot of films and television shows over the years. So
Wow.
definitely something I want to continue to keep doing. So
Yeah. Wow. Keep it up, man. Great. So, is it good to be back in Austin?
yeah, it's great. It's I mean, we were in Austin for 10 years or so, and then we moved to Memphis for a couple and moved back. And this is definitely where our people are. So
My brother lives in Austin. I've been there many times.
oh yeah?
Yeah. But I heard it's
Oh
changed a
nice.
lot. I heard it's really
Yeah, it
downtown
is
and
a
doubled
whole
in
different
size.
scene for sure. Yeah, some places are unrecognizable from when we lived here the first time.
Which part of the city are you in?
We're over on the east side.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
my brother's on the east side too, yeah.
oh yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder where. Well, maybe we're neighbors.
Yeah, it might be, I can't remember, Chestnut Avenue, I think. That's it.
Chestnut. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah. Are you
yeah.
planning any trips over here? You're in Italy right now. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm in Italy, yeah, yeah. We're thinking about coming over to visit. He's always saying we should come over, and he's been over here many times.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's just that we've got a new baby. It's,
Oh, you do?
yeah, I got a 10-month-old,
Oh,
so
congrats.
yeah, thanks, yeah, it's life-changing.
Yes, it
Who's
is.
yeah,
Ours is just a little over 2 now.
okay.
So, is this
You're
your
ahead of
only
us.
one?
Yeah, yeah, first one, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
10 months,
learning curve, yeah.
you probably a little bit caught up on sleep, but still dealing with that a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny, you know exactly what I'm going through, yeah.
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 I one thing everybody always, like, jokes about how you don't get any sleep, but it's not
Mm.
funny when you're in it. Like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're never gonna sleep again," but then it's like, "Oh, I wish you had told me how bad it really was."
Mm, mm. I sneak out to the couch, but, it's not getting the work done that affects me as well.
Mhm.
It's a lot of babysitting and,
Yeah.
I'm a productive person. I like to be, you know, doing the podcast and things, and
Yeah.
yeah, how did you find it through? Did you continue making music, or did you, allocate the time away from the family?
I mean, things definitely slowed down for me, because we had our kid in 2020 in the midst of COVID. Um,
Right, yeah.
so I'd also started, working a job at a nonprofit music venue in Memphis. Um, and so things definitely slowed down, and my wife is in grad school, so there's definitely a lot of daddy son time,
Yeah, yeah. I
which
think
is
it's probably
great, but
better when
it cuts back on productivity, certainly.
it does, yeah, yeah, you really got to like a Zen teacher, yeah, but, I mean, COVID as well, I saw one interview you did that said, you didn't have the best time in COVID-19. You're glad to see the back of it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely glad to see it. Watch it walk away for sure.
Yeah, I think, we all were, but, yeah. I coped better with COVID than the child, I have to say, because COVID, I could I was could locked in my room by myself,
Yeah. Well,
kinda
that's true. I
happy.
mean, I was always locked in my room working on music stuff anyway, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not that much changed, in that regard. But
Yeah, but you were touring, but you're a touring musician, you're an active,
yeah, that was tough
so
for
that
sure.
that was cut out.
Um, yeah, and I it was kind of weird. I watched a lot of my friends either pivot towards all just virtual stuff here and there, and really take advantage of that, or just kind of a lot of people just kind of dropped out of the game altogether.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
kind of did
yeah,
something in the middle, I guess.
yeah. So are the Rocket Boys on hiatus now, or are you gonna do some more with the guys? Or
We actually played a show not too long ago, our first full band show in like 4 years, at Mohawk. I'm sure you're probably familiar with that venue in
Oh, yeah,
Austin.
yeah. Yeah.
It was a really fun show, so I don't count us out quite yet, but things are
Okay.
slowed down for sure. I mean, we were road dogs for so many years, and we
Mm,
all are getting older
mm.
and stuff like that, so, we'll figure out what's next, but
Yeah. You kind of have to adapt to, the second act, don't you? Because once you've done so much touring, just kind of the novelty is completely worn off, and that's really the
Yeah,
reality of life on the road, that it's so tiring and so demanding, taking you away from your family, and then to change gears and be like a studio band or take a new formation it takes time to adjust.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, I definitely wanna do at least another album or 2 with the
Yeah,
Rocket
well, yeah.
Boys for sure. Because it's I mean, I love the music that we make together, and I love just getting to create with those guys. I've been doing it
Mm,
since this is actually our 20th year. Our very first show was 2003. So, gotta
wow.
gotta gotta do
Took a
something
blindfold.
special.
Yeah. Great. Well, this is something different today as well. It's quite a coup to get to speak to Jad. I'm really excited.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I like you told me to give you a list of people I would like that were unattainable, and so I did,
yeah,
and Jada was at the
yeah.
top of the list, and I kinda put him on as just like a far-fetched, like,
Mhm.
joke almost, like, of course, he wouldn't, um but yeah, fortunately, he signed on, and I kinda still can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lovely guy. He seems in interviews and everything, but these people are just so busy. I mean,
Yeah,
there was so much to do, but maybe we just got him a good time.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Did you
So are
listen to
you
radio?
Oh, go on.
Did you listen to Radiolab a lot? You've followed him for many years?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was thinking about it last night, just to as I was preparing for this interview, and probably around 2006 or so is when we started touring a lot, because we
Mhm.
were all still in college and just kinda weekend warriors, before then. But we started hitting the road a lot in 2006, and I think it was around then when someone somehow introduced us to Radiolab, and it was just, like, this new art form I had never heard before. I mean, I'm sure I'd heard some podcasts, but they weren't really as big of a deal at that point. And then just the production and the chance to think about these, you know, enormous universal things, but under this microscopic lens was just so cool and unique to me. And I think we all just listened to it nonstop in the van, and
Oh,
we
yeah?
spend a lot more time in the van than we did making music when we're
Yeah,
on
yeah.
tour. And so we had a lot of chances to listen to it. And before every new tour, I'd stack the iPod with as many new episodes as I could fit on it, and yeah, it
Nice.
was it was it was really great and just kind of a unique experience to get
Yeah.
to journey along with Jad and Robert and hear all those great stories. What about you?
Yeah.
Did you listen to
Well,
Radiolab much?
not very much, no. I don't listen NPR. I didn't listen to much, more American. I'm more
Mhm.
tuned into European, but, obviously know him and, from the Dolly Parton,
Oh,
era.
that was a great series. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, also was watching his TED Talk. He has, he goes on about this third thing, which probably you'll get into it with him, but, I found that very interesting because with this episode, we make a third thing, don't we? We make a song. It's kind of
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I mean, of course, like, getting a chance to talk to one of my creative heroes is amazing, but then to get to come back and write a song about it, I think will be really unique and really special.
Yeah, yeah. He's a musician as well, no? He did a lot of the Radiolab
Yeah.
the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know what interviewers do before interviews other than look at their Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
But I saw that he got a degree in experimental music.
Yeah.
Um, and it totally shows. I mean, a lot of that stuff is really unique and all sorts of blips and bloops, and and cool pads and just all the editing techniques that he uses on that show are especially at that point were very unique to Radiolab.
Yeah. We kinda do it the opposite way on this show. I don't do any editing. I don't do any
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
work. We do all the work on the song at the end, so
yeah.
that's kinda my
Oh,
excuse because
yeah. Hopefully, you can at least edit out the first 3 minutes of me saying, "No, I can't hear you."
alright, I'll do that. I might just leave it in now because you mentioned it. But, uh, but it's a real art form, isn't it? To go through, spend all that time and patience editing it together.
Yeah,
It's, yeah,
yeah, for sure.
beautiful piece of work. Yeah.
And just this, even the ways, even the interviews themselves are so unique because you're just hearing the one side of it, and then they kind of splice in their own commentary between the
Mm.
segments, and yeah, it's really. I'll have to send you a list of all my favorite episodes for you to check out because
Okay,
there's
yeah,
there's some
yeah,
really brilliant stuff.
yeah. It's a new art form for me. I haven't listened to that many, so I just did got into
Hmm.
podcasts because as a musician, I did them for my into people interviewing me to on it, and I really enjoyed it. Like an hour talking about myself, going in depth
Hmm.
and about the reasons for the music. I mean, it's great. You put so much work into an album, and when you talk to a normal journalist or a print journalist, they take out what they want, and
Hmm.
you've been interviewed many times, and I know. So, but then with a podcast, it's unfiltered. You really get to
Yeah,
explore the thing. So
yeah. It's like
that's
you're just sitting there with your two cool friends that are talking about cool stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like we're chatting now. I mean, I forget that this is going to be broadcast later, and other people will hear us chatting because it feels like a normal Zoom call to me now. It's just having
Exactly.
having a chat.
Yeah, feels like we're back in COVID times, and this is our only way to communicate.
Yeah, living on Zoom. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been great for me because I'm in Italy. I mean, if if yeah, if I had to be doing this in person, I'd have to be traveling around the world, and I can do this all from the comfort of my home in the middle of
Yeah.
nowhere, and yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I always thought it'd be fun to do a podcast of my own, but I just have so many random ideas. I can never stick to just one. So we'll see how this
Yeah.
interview goes.
Well, if it wasn't for COVID, I really got stuck into it because I didn't have any choice. So God bless
Mhm.
COVID.
Yeah. You're one of the few people that can say that.
Yeah. So what else are you going to be working on then, apart from what other things do you have lined up? What's the
Well, I'm finishing up a new Wealthy West record, and I'm kind of at that point. I'm sure you're familiar with this, where you're just already tired of it and ready to move on
Mhm.
to the next thing, and you're like,
Yeah.
these songs were great to me at one point, but now they're just
Yeah.
boring, and I have all these new ideas that are coming to me. Um, and so that's part of the reason why now I've kind of started just experimenting and doing some instrumental stuff, just because it's a chance to be creative and get to
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
flex those muscles rather than like nitpicking, out loud the vocal needs to be here and where
Yeah. Yeah.
where the guitar needs to come in and stuff. So, but that record
Yeah.
is almost done. Half of it is being mixed right now, and I'm still kind of tweaking a few of the last little bits here and there. So,
Yeah. You need to pass it on to someone else though, in many cases, just to
yeah, I've always mixed everything myself um, for the Wealthy West until recently, and it's been so nice to not have to mix everything myself for this one. So it's been fun, and I'm working with two really great mixing engineers. One of which is actually the guitar player for the Rocket Boys. He kind of went. He's always been a engineer and a mixing engineer, but then because of COVID, he started doing a lot more of that when he got off the road. Um, and he just has blown it out of the water. So really excited for
wow.
everybody to hear the stuff I'm working on.
Yeah, you need someone else to take it to the next level. We have a producer on this show, that's why I don't. I just write the songs,
Okay.
a couple of chords and some words that rhyme, and then give it to these. We have a production team and these three guys, and one of them's the producer, and he does all the mixing and the mastering, does everything. and then
Oh,
another
nice.
guy's a multi-instrumentalist, a drummer, but plays the
Hmm.
keys, so we can do a lot in MIDI, and then another guitarist, bass player. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, because yeah, it can't get bogged down in the details too much. If I had to produce all the songs as well, it's
Hmm.
yeah.
Oh yeah, it'd be nonstop for you.
So it'd be great if we could work on this song together. If you could, you can send over some stems, and then we can
Oh
develop
yeah,
it and mix and master and
for
and
sure.
take a lot of the heavy lifting from you.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'm so used to
Great,
doing everything myself, so it'll be nice to just kind of send a couple ideas over and see what happens.
brilliant. Yeah, they guys love collaborating with everyone as well. So yeah, these
And
guys are in.
where are they all located? Are they also all over the world or?
No, they're all in Italy here, just local guys. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, I mean they're just over the moon because we're collaborating with all these lots of American artists, also some
Hmm.
English, and yeah, just connecting with people all over the world and making music is just yeah, musician's dream. So
It's awesome. Yeah, I'm super
and
excited about.
we're getting a real groove because we're doing these every week. So we meet every week and work on a different song, and so we've got a real
Okay.
production line going. Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
What's who's like been your favorite song uh songwriter that you worked with so far?
Oh, we've had so many great ones. We've had who do we have? You might know Sally Saltman from who wrote Feist 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh yeah, I
So,
listened to that episode a couple weeks ago or a couple months
oh,
ago
okay.
maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's a
her
great
song was
songwriter.
so cool too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
and I mean,
that
yeah,
was
of course it is. You mean she wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, so
yeah, yeah.
she's gonna have some chops.
She's above my pay grade for sure. Yeah, it's really when you get a professional songwriter, it's such and like yourself as well. It all just goes, so much easier because you're spitting out songs. You sneeze and a song comes out. So yeah,
I try. Allergies are pretty
yeah,
rough in Austin, so it helps.
yeah.
And
I
she's based in
remember that.
Is she based in Australia? Is that right?
Yeah, she's in Australia.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was such a cool one.
but we've got some good episodes coming out with just did one with Band of Skulls, who is
Oh, nice.
yeah,
They're
this
awesome.
yeah, really really big band and Elliot Murphy as well, who is a very established name. He came out at the same time as Bruce Springsteen, and it was like him and
Oh,
Bruce.
wow.
Yeah, as the next Dylans, and
He was the competition?
yeah, and he emigrated to America and kind of went down a different path, and yeah, so working with all these different heavyweight artists and trying to get more from Asia as well, and trying to get more
Oh, cool.
yeah, not just Americans.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because it's easier to work with and, all my connections are there, so that's
Mhm.
where we're getting most people, but I do want to spread the net and not be so American focused.
Yeah, there's tons of great bands coming out of, Korea and Japan for sure.
Yeah, for sure, yeah, I'd love to, I'm in touch with an Indian as well, and, someone from the Philippines, so,
Wow, that's so cool.
yeah.
Are you the one doing all the research to find these bands, or is that part of your team does
I have
that too, or?
I have another researcher as well who helps with that,
Mhm.
and then someone else reaches out to the guests because that's, just to get Jad. You remember how long it took?
Yeah,
Like,
I
ah.
forgot we were doing this. I was like, I guess you can get anybody.
Well, you just keep contacting them, contacting them
Yeah.
eventually because they're just getting so many emails.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I
but
was like
eventually
when I saw that email from Jad, I was like, "Wait, is this really happening?"
did I agree to this?
Yeah.
So you've probably never interviewed anyone before, no? You've always
Um,
been
I
interviewed.
I've always been the interviewee. There was a time when I worked for this music television company called Diddy TV. They do like music videos. They have
Mhm,
like a
mhm,
streaming channel. Um, and I was a VJ. And then one year at South by Southwest, I went around and asked like a few questions to different
mhm.
bands, but it was mostly just like can you say your name and that you're watching Titty TV? So,
Yeah, you
so
might have to go
definitely
a little
never,
more depth.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely never like a long form interview like this. Um,
Yeah.
for sure. But
Oh,
honestly,
it's
I've
been
never liked being interviewed. I've always
no,
been more
nobody
keen to
does.
ask questions, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Yeah. The best interviews are the ones that just go like conversations, because if he was coming around your house for dinner, you wouldn't, be writing down a list of questions on the napkins that you had to ask him, you'd
Yeah.
worry about the food, and,
Yeah,
convers
exactly. And
people don't shut up, listen to me. I mean, listen, just people are just give them a mic, they just keep talking, so everyone's got a
yeah,
story to tell and
yeah, for sure. And I've been interviewed enough to know all the questions I never want to hear again. So I tried to stay away from like, what was it like being a child in Tennessee, or like, what's your favorite color?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, get some more imaginative questions.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I actually, are you familiar with Chat GPT?
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's actually
should have, I
blocked in
should have,
Italy at the moment.
is it really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, for
wow.
copyright reasons, yeah.
Oh man. Well, I use it all the time for my job, my day job. Um, but I just thought, you know what? I'm gonna ask Chat. I should have saved it. I just kind of glanced at it, but I typed in, um, pretend that you are a big fan of Radiolab and Jad Abumrad, and you're interviewing him, and give me 10 questions that he's never been asked before and what you think his answers are going to be. I wish I had just saved that and tried to see if he was
Wow.
how good it really was. Um, yeah, it's crazy what it can do. I
I
was listening to
know.
some other podcasts and they were talking about using it as a songwriting tool.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
and so I typed in, give me give me the song structure along with the chords in the style of so and so, um, with verse, chorus, bridge, outro. And it was not a great song, but it wasn't really a terrible song. And so part of me, I mentioned I have too many ideas. Part of me wants to make an album that's all AI inspired.
Mm.
Maybe that's because it seems a little bit easier than digging from my soul. But I was impressed. There was a couple good lines in there.
Yeah, I did use it for
Of
press
course.
releases. It wrote a
Oh
really
yeah.
good press release before it was blocked, yeah, because, I don't like writing the press releases, they're
Hmm.
the typical example of, a formulaic thing that an AI can even now can do, because
Yeah.
there's a real these are millions of press releases have been, you start with this, you introduce,
Hmm.
then there's the brief bio of the guest, and then the bio of the other guy, and then some quotes, and it did a better job than I did. It really made up some quotes which I had forgot to include before, and yeah, but it really did a good because it researches all the guests, which I'd have to do. It takes me hours by
Yeah.
hand, and it did it
Hmm.
in seconds.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do, do communications for this music venue nonprofit. It's a 90-year-old music venue in Memphis. Um, but since I do all their social media stuff, it's basically come see this show, come see that
Mm.
show, come do
Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
and so it's just the same. I'm trying to think of different ways to say the same exact thing over and over again. So I was like, maybe
Mm.
I'll just try this and say it in a more like I'll write it out and then say this in a more fun way or a more engaging way
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and so far it's been really great for that.
yeah. Well, I'm also using Midjourney to try and, to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really into Midjourney, but then I ran out of my free trial. So I used a different email and then I ran out of emails to do free trials with. But I was upset. It was like taking over my life, just trying to figure out how to do really good stuff, and
It's still a skill, yeah,
um,
I haven't quite mastered it.
yeah,
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 you have to be a good graphic designer.
you have to know the language for sure and know
You
what you're
do.
actually looking for. Um, but I got really into. I'll send you some stuff. I got really into trying to make like screenshots from British Saturday morning television, but different scenes with that vibe. Um, and it was so fun to just see what it came up with.
Yeah.
And then, I tried to do one where it was monsters playing croquet, in that style, but I accidentally spelled it crochet, so it gave me all these yarn monsters. And
Oh,
actually
wow.
turned out like everything is just so cool,
It
especially
really
once
gives
you
you
kind
a
of speak
yeah,
the language.
it doesn't. It gives you ideas. I was working on I needed some one song was called "Drunk on the Cork," and we had about you getting drunk on the smell of the politicians. It's an
Mhm.
Arab expression. You get drunk
Yeah.
of not drinking the wine. So I was just playing around with it and pictures of politicians, and eventually it kind of suggested something that looked a bit like the Obama poster. And then oh, of course, so I made it
Oh,
a bit like the
nice.
Obama poster, but with just drunk underneath, and then people.
Oh, yeah? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so you can because imitate those styles. Also, there's another one with a song about public landowner, which is the public rights, and then so it can imitate a national parks poster, which is those national
Oh,
parks are
yeah.
beautiful. Those kind of screen printing.
Mhm.
So it
Yeah.
would I could for me to do that would be an impossible amount of work, but
Mhm.
I don't have the skill. But it can make one, and
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's
crazy.
incredible.
It's a great
Yeah,
collaborator.
yeah,
Like, I'm
yeah,
not really
yeah.
too worried about Midjourney taking over society or anything at this point,
Hmm.
you know? It's a great way to if you don't have another person next to you, you can bounce ideas off of this
Yeah,
AI, and that's kinda
yeah,
how I've
yeah.
been thinking about it.
And especially as musicians, we're being paid in cents for our work to
Yeah.
use to use uh, the AI because I just need an image for Spotify, or a
Mhm.
canvas cover or an image cover.
Yeah.
It's not going to be printed. It's just I just need one every week. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
paying a
so
graphic
cool.
designer is yeah. Trouble is this they're coming along for music now.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of crazy AI music for sure.
Mm.
And I don't know, I actually haven't listened to it, but I've maybe one song, but there's one where they have, like, Drake singing some new song, and, like,
Right.
they can
Right.
even imitate, like, actual artists and
Yeah.
create the music on the spot, which is just wild.
So maybe soon I can upload the episode after the conversation to the bot, and then it'll get a song, and we'll do the whole.
Yeah, well, and pretty soon you can just put in my name and Jad's name, and then it'll create the whole podcast for you, interview
Yeah,
and
yeah,
everything.
yeah. We're joking, but yeah, I'm sure people will be doing something like that. But the best things for me has been the conversations because if I did the first 100 episodes by myself, and I would have got Jad to come on, and I would have, I'd have researched him for a couple of days, come up with a
Mhm.
bunch of questions. But, I didn't spend years listening to him in a van. I don't have that.
Yeah.
Can't fake that. You can't fake that enthusiasm. You can't. That's gold, when somebody who really, really knows him
Yeah,
really
for
means
sure.
means so much more. So kind of the songs are now kind of like, yeah, that people come for the songs, but they stay for the conversations.
Mhm. Yeah. Such a cool idea. Like, when Mary, my agent, told me about it, I was like, "This is, like, the coolest thing I've ever heard," and then who knew that I'd actually get to interview somebody that I
Yeah,
look up to so much?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you could reach out to him yourself, but you need an excuse.
Yeah. And you've got a little more clout than I do, I'm sure.
Wow. It's just it's just a excuse, a platform, and that's what people need. No,
Yeah.
need an
So how many
excuse.
episodes have you done now?
Oh, we're up to about 130. So, but probably by the time this comes out, we'll be
Oh, man.
140, Yeah, yeah.
That's so
Well,
awesome.
I did the first 100 in a year. Did 100 in the first year. Like I really
Mhm.
burnt through it. I started with 3 a
Yeah.
week. Yeah, because
That
we're in
is wild.
lockdown.
Yeah. What else? Yeah.
But then I just did the interviews myself, and it was a lot faster because I actually released the first 50 episodes in the order that I recorded them, so in chronological order.
Oh,
Just
yeah?
because
Oh,
we were
cool.
with the band, but now I'm waiting on so many musicians. Some people take like it's been 2 years waiting for a song to get it
Oh,
together.
man. I'll try
So
and be a little
hopefully
bit
you're
quicker than that.
yeah. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least,
No,
a year and a half. I can guarantee a year and a half.
okay. Well, people are on tour, they go away and they have lives and they have children and life gets in the way, so yeah.
So who's your dream catch for an artist to interview?
It'd be nice to have Springsteen interviewing Obama one day on. I think that's they've already done.
Yeah, he has done that. That is true. Man, wouldn't that be crazy?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I hope just to get bigger and bigger artists every time and, get that cumulative effect because,
Mhm.
it becomes really worthwhile for, labels to put someone on the show because they get a lot more listeners and they get a lot of exposure, so
Yeah.
but, yeah, just this kinda incremental.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we're getting there slowly, slowly, catchy monkey.
Yeah. So are you still doing much music, or is this kind of your full-time thing now?
No, full time. I'm
Yeah.
retired. Yeah, I'm delegating everything. Now you're doing the interview.
Hello.
Oh, hello, welcome.
Hi.
Hey, Jack.
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
Am I
Where
in the right place at the right time or are you guys
Perfect.
still
Yeah,
doing? Okay, excellent.
perfect. Perfect. So where are you at right now?
I'm in Brooklyn.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, originally.
You were traveling. You're doing a lot of traveling recently. Is that right?
Yeah, I was in Minnesota and San Diego and Nashville and am now back happily
I'm
recovering.
sure. I'm
It's funny,
sure.
traveling doesn't I mean, you must know this. Traveling gets harder. It's fun and then
Yeah,
it
it
just
does.
bites you back hard.
It does. I just had to drive I live in Austin, but my family's in Memphis, and I just drove to Memphis. It's a 10-hour drive, which back in the day would like excite me to be on the road for 10 hours.
Yeah.
But now it's like, yeah,
Wow.
not fun. Of course, I also had a screaming toddler in the back seat the whole time. I just had screaming bandmates in the back, usually.
Where do you live normally? Are you in Nashville
I'm
or
in Austin. I'm in
you're in
Austin now.
Austin? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was in Memphis for about 5 years in Austin before that, but we're back in Austin now.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
And
I'm honored to be doing this with you all. So I appreciate this very much.
yeah, we're honored.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much for giving us a minute of your time for sure.
Yeah. 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 My pleasure.
Um, have you met Jack? Is this your first time meeting Jack as well?
This is my first time meeting Jack, unless it's not.
Hello, Jack.
And hi, it's good to meet you.
I wasn't
Great.
trying to catch you in something. I don't think you've met.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So,
No.
But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well,
oh
thanks
no,
so
you
much for agreeing. Yeah,
no.
I'm just here as a I interviewed, Brandon first and just to warm him up, and now he's
Okay.
hot, he's ready to go.
Oh,
Ready
excellent.
to go.
He's smoking.
Ready to go.
He's fantastic. Fantastic.
On the
Well, I'll bring the
Um,
energy back down.
Yeah.
perfect. Perfect. Yeah, there's a lot of screaming. Um, so I mentioned to you that I wanted to talk about just creativity and creative block. I think is there has there been have you gone through many creative droughts in your life, or is there like talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you say creative blocks, the first thing that comes to mind for me, I mean, it's funny. I've never had like writer's block per se, uh, but I have the two sort of variants of creative blocks that I have that happens to me constantly, and that's happened to me right now. Is first just a sense that you're just a bag of tricks that you keep pulling out the same tricks over and over again. Um,
Hmm.
and that it's sort of one of the downsides of craft in a way. It's that you can sometimes just like rely on technique and craft to do something and not really say anything new or explore anything new in the process. but you can kind of get by, oh, I'll just do this move and do that turn and do that thing. And then
Yeah.
uh, it's a little bit like a friend was once, this is actually, it's not like this at all, but I'm just going to say it. The friend was telling me about her grandmother that had dementia. And
Mhm.
towards the sort of like, as it got bad, her grandmother was still able to form a conversation, still having it because there are all of these like little conversational habits that we form throughout a lifetime. Just phrases like, you know what I mean? You just say that. You can say that 15 times in a conversation and make it sound like you're actually talking, you know? And so
Yeah.
she realized she would have conversations, full conversations with her grandmother, but there was no content. There was just all of the trappings of conversations. And sometimes I feel similarly about the creative process that there are times when I'm just doing the things I do, but I've lost a sense of why, and I've lost a
Hmm.
sense of what the intention is and what I'd like the outcome to be. So that's one version of creative block that I have. The other is I like finishing stuff is just like is like sometimes paralyzingly hard knowing
Yeah.
when it's done.
Starting stuff is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I could write you 15 beginnings
Hmm.
and then but then well where does it end? And typically the end is in there somewhere, but you just haven't recognized it, I find. And
Yeah.
I find ends to be really hard. And it was an interesting conversation with me because and my old co-host Robert Krulwich, he couldn't start a piece unless he knew the end. And I was just like, why would you start a piece if you know the end? That just feels to me like uh somehow like you're cheating yourself from the pleasures of the creative process. But now I'm kind of like coming back around. I'm like, I can't start anything unless I know the end because I've had such a history of not knowing how to end things. So,
Yeah. I wonder, are you familiar with the oblique strategies? Do you ever use that when you're creating stuff?
oh, is that the
Brian
it's not
Eno's
E is it E oh,
cards.
it's the Eno cards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I somebody gave me that once and I tried it a little bit. I've never actually like really used it, but
Hmm.
I love the sort of thought behind it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you
Do
were
you use it?
saying I use the idea of it. I used to have this app. It was on an app for a while,
Mm.
and it's funny, they stopped, like, the app stopped existing, but I couldn't delete it from my phone because it was so precious to me. But it didn't work at all, and I kept getting these notifications like, "Do you still wanna keep this app that has no purpose?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." Um, but I think about there's certain ones like, one is just use only one of each element or take out 5 things,
Yeah.
um, and things like that. And then also, uh, there's another card thing that I have called Words and Music in 6 seconds. It's kind of a similar thing where it's just like either gives you like a brief little bit of advice on this or that, or just says like, "Go outside," like,
Yeah.
just take a break, which is sometimes really
Oh,
helpful.
that's great advice.
But definitely, like, I think sometimes restrictions can be very beneficial to me, because especially
Too.
now with MIDI and stuff, we have any instrument that we could ever want at our fingertips. And
Yeah.
a lot of times that can hinder me from creating because I want to find the perfect sound rather than just making a great song or a great piece.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. Totally.
so
Yeah, it's funny.
that's been really helpful for sure for me, just kind of restricting myself rather than having an open-ended dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I resonate with that because it's funny. I was just yesterday working on a piece of music and I had gotten myself into one of these cul-de-sacs where I couldn't like progress with it.
Mhm.
And I just made a rule. I was like, your only rule for this session is you must go forward, right? In the timeline.
Mhm.
Um, to just like you can't actually once you make a choice, you can't actually go back in time, like back 5 seconds and mess with something. You just have to keep going forward.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And
That's scary.
it was hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I know at some point I'll go back and I'll edit it, and I'm sure I made choices that are silly, but I just generated all of this material, um,
Mhm.
because I just felt like, okay, I have to honor this choice I made, uh, just as a way to like psych myself out of this like overthinking, kind of circling something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's definitely easy to overthink stuff. I wonder if do you have any like tricks or hacks to get you back and focused or when you're starting something fresh? I remember when I was first kind of becoming a songwriter rather than just a person who writes songs. So when that was becoming a little bit more of my identity and my career, I stumbled on some weird website and it was like, imagine a a glowing orb on the top of your head and like sit there with it for like 2 minutes before you do anything, and like just all these weird things. And
Well,
I don't know if any of them work at all, but that was something that I did. I haven't done it in years and years. It probably just started seeming stupid at some point. But I'm wondering if you have any like weird tricks that you think about when you're starting back at something, or if there's just something that you've heard other people doing that you thought was interesting.
yeah. Wow. Well, I'll tell you my tricks, which are not weird, but I'm much more interested to hear what yours are. Um, you know, I don't. Let's see. This is not a trick by any stretch, but I've started being very conscious to walk into because I don't know. Like you said, you mentioned you have a toddler, so I imagine you're having this struggle uh times 10, which is that like the vast swaths of time in which you had to create are now chopped up into little slivers. So you spend a lot of
Yeah.
time kind of like, oh, I've got this half hour at the end of the day. I'll sit down and I'll get something done. And then that half hour, of course, you waste it, or you feel like you waste it, but you're not even really
Yeah.
sure how to measure the value of the time you just spent.
Hmm.
So I've been I've been thinking that with each of the moments that I have, which are increasingly few, to make something, I just walk in and I spend 15 seconds, 20 seconds at the beginning, just not so much making a map because that feels a little too prescriptive, but just sort of saying, what is my intention right now? You know,
Mm.
um, am I what am I trying to explore right now? Maybe it's just one small thing. Okay. So if I walk in with like an idea of what I'm going to apply myself to, and I've started writing that down in like a sentence. It has to be
Oh
kind of an
wow.
open sentence. It can't be like
Yeah.
I'm going to do A, B, and C. But more it's just like I want to know what it feels like to, I don't know, can I take the sound of rocks clinking and turn it into a drone or something? Just something simple like
Yeah.
uh so that it's like it's just like it's intentional, it's focused. Um and that keeps me from repeating myself. And it also keeps me at the end from feeling like I wasted time. Because
Hmm.
like I went in with something specific and I tried to accomplish it. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But it feels like I can measure that value of that time in a way that's better.
Yeah.
So that's a thing I've just started doing. Um, I can't say it's like useful or not yet because I just started it, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
I like the orb. That sounds cool. Like just something that kind
Yeah.
of
It
like
was,
roots you in the.
I guess, I mean, I'm sure it's just some sort of like meditative mindfulness practice, but back then people weren't talking about that. So it was just a orb on my head. And somehow I assumed it would lead to more creativity.
Mm,
Um, yeah, it was, and I think also just like you were mentioning, even with just a small chunk of time, like even just experimenting can be useful and productive. Even if you don't, like you were saying, can I make rocks clicking together into a drone? Like even if that doesn't end up on your piece, like you know how to do that. And you know you can use it, in the future sometime for something that it does work with,
yeah,
you know.
totally. And I, because of the kind of stuff that I do, which is very often, it's like formless textures and fields of
Hmm.
sound and that kind of thing. Um, it's like you can get really lost in that. Just Like there's just, you have to give it some logic at some point, right?
Yeah.
So that
Do
feels
you?
important to,
Why do you have to give it some logic?
well, I mean, it can be, uh, I don't know. It's I'll tell you, let me answer your question, but with an anecdote. Um, I, I was trying to do a lot of, sorry, we're talking about music, but that's okay, right? I mean, I
Oh
can
yeah.
talk about
You can
podcasting or
talk about it.
whatever. I'll
Yeah.
follow your lead, but, I was trying to make something that's a bit like, I don't know, like fields of energy in some way that
Hmm.
sort of change and shift. And so there are these kind of like atonal, gauzy things that shift and change. It's hard to know when you're in that kind of mode, like when does it begin? When does it end? What is it doing? What's the sort of structure of it? But
Hmm.
it needs something, but you kind of have to find it in the making in some way. And that's been it's always been the struggle for me, like, oh, well, how do, is that a piece? Do I even need to give it a title? What does a title do to that? Like there's
Yeah.
just ways in which when you're in this kind of like open-ended space, I don't know. I don't even know what to call that. But then recently I heard a so there's this album that actually my brother-in-law, Eugene Thacker, I did a Radiolab about him a million years ago. He is a poet and a scholar, and he wrote some poems. And then this guy who is a sound designer I love, Siavash Amini, and he does sort of these sort of like spectral things.
Hmm.
He made music to the poem, and it was kind of a revelation. I was like, oh, poems. Poems are these, like, they're as close as words can get to music, but they're typically short. They're organized in stanzas. They invent their own punctuation along the way, and they create a kind of a map. And so I have been actually looking for poems recently as the logic, right? Like, can I find a
Okay.
poem? And I just found one the other day, which is an amazing poem. It was about that big. I was like, oh, that's it. Like, can I, maybe that's what the sound worlds are doing, is they're the sort of sound interior poem in a way. But the
Yeah.
poem becomes the sort of holding space, becomes the container in a way.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, I forget what it was that got me on this riff, but it was like finding something that holds it. So I guess when I
Hmm.
say logic, I mean almost like a holding space, you know,
Yeah.
which is a thought or it's a poem or it's a story. Um,
Yeah. I imagine it's hard to like have a theme for a drone. Like if you're just doing
right.
some sort of droney long thing, having that like place to land before you get started and kind of set your intentions as you're going in rather than just holding a D for 8 minutes, you know?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I grew up on film music, right? So the earliest
Hmm.
earliest stuff I listened to was like Bernard Herrmann, like Vertigo soundtrack. Like as a
Uh,
young boy in the
yeah.
80s, I fell in love with that. I was like, oh, I just love the way that makes me feel. And you feel so suspended. And that works as pure music, but a lot of film music actually needs the story. It needs the narrative in order be to have any borders around it. And
Yeah.
in many ways, I got into podcasting and storytelling almost for that reason. The stories became the sort of like the the holding space for the sound and the feelings they carried, which before that didn't have any kind of logic to it. And now that I've left Radiolab and I'm exploring other weird spaces,
Hmm.
I need to sort of find that again, but in a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. You mentioned film music. It reminds me, I was listening to some podcast recently, and they were talking about how the music on this movie they were watching kind of ruined the suspense because it told the story before the actors could tell the story. I
Right.
thought that was so interesting. I'd never thought about that because I've been fortunate to do a lot of stuff with TV and film over the years. Um, and I just never thought about the music. The music is there to support the story and set the tone for the story, of course, but I've never thought about how it could kind of overreach sometimes
Yeah.
and expose the secret before the actors do.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like Minority Report. It's a fucking great movie, but then the
yeah,
soundtrack is just clobbering you on the head at every
yeah.
moment. But I'm gonna ask you, how did you go from you said you went from, being a guy who writes songs to being a songwriter. What was that phase shift? Like, what was happening in your life that took you from one to the other?
Um, well, I mean, I think it was just, I started this band called the Rocket Boys in 2003, and we were all in college, and we were playing on the weekends, and we were in this small town in Texas called Abilene, and you can only play, so many times in this tiny West Texas town, and so it was just kind of natural for us to start touring, and then, the more we tour, the more exposure we get. We got a manager a few years later. And I think it was at that point where it was like, oh, this is a real thing. This is like not just a really fun hobby with my friends. Like there's a real future here. There's a chance for me to succeed in this thing, which I've always loved doing. Um, and so it was a really slow process. Cause I always was a guy that wrote songs, from the moment I picked up my guitar, I was more interested in writing my own songs than learning other people's songs. And so I just, yeah, at one point I was like, yeah, I think I'm a songwriter now. And here we are.
Hmm,
And I've just never looked back.
wow. Was that like you on the side of the road in Austin somewhere and it fell on you like a revelation, or was it like a slow cooking of like, "Oh, here I am."
Actually, what it was? There was a moment where I was sending my manager all these songs that didn't quite fit the band, the Rocket Boys. Um, and he was always like, you should do something with these. These are great songs. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I just want to focus on the Rocket Boys. And then um one year he was like, okay, you really need to do something with this. And I was like, no, I really don't want to. And he's like, well, just so you know, three of the songs are going to be used on this TV show coming up in a month, and we got you booked on Paste Magazine's South by Southwest showcase. So you're going to do it. And I was like, okay, fair enough. If it's real to you, it can be real to me.
Interesting,
Um, but that was like a new thing. It was more songwriter side than band side.
interesting.
If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, but it sounds
Um,
like, what I hear in what you just said is that you were defining yourself as like a band leader, and then you, because of outside success, suddenly reformatted yourself. "Oh, no, no, I'm a songwriter," which sometimes could be with a band, but sometimes not.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm,
Exactly. And so, um, I kept doing Rocket Boy stuff, and I kept doing this other project, which is called The Wealthy West, and a bunch of random stuff in between the two. So, but yeah, I love being a songwriter, and I love just creating. But like you mentioned, starting is always a lot more fun than finishing. I have so many ideas for other side projects or different directions to go, and there's just never enough time, especially with a 2-year-old.
yeah. How often do you do TV film work?
I mean, I've done a ton of stuff over the years, just more like sync stuff than scoring. Scoring is something I'm trying to get into at the moment. I've been um working with a crew called Centric Music. They're actually based in UK. Um, yeah, that's kind of a world because I think in the very beginning, much like you, it was movie soundtracks that
Yeah,
made me really fall in love with kind of the dramatic side of music and not just, the stuff you hear on the radio. Um, and that's always been fascinating for me and just how it can set the tone, how it can make something that's mundane seem incredibly emotional or the opposite of that,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. It's funny. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like I feel like film soundtracks have not gotten their proper, like, as a cultural driver. I feel like a lot of people were changed by like great film soundtracks.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, think about all the John Williams stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody like knows half of his repertoire just because they love the movies that they were in.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah. What about you? Where did you got your start? You went to school. You got a degree in experimental music.
Yeah. Well, it was, yeah, I mean, I went to Oberlin, um,
Hmm.
and, I studied, composition. And at that point, it was like I sort of stumbled I mean, I knew I wanted to write music, but I just went to the place that accepted me, which happened to be this like very experimental, um, like music concrete. Like they were experimental, like, but from the post-war kind of period.
Oh, gotcha.
So I ended up like learning a lot of old experimental techniques,
Hmm.
sort of against my will, but then I came to love it. And, and then
Like
in,
NC, Terry Riley's NC,
right. Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly. That was one of the
I
first pieces I heard at Oberlin, which I liked.
I
Like,
remember hearing you did a Radiolab episode about that, and that was I heard that piece in college in a music theory course, and I had never heard it mentioned ever again. And then y'all did that, and I was like, man, this is so cool. Like, I can just
yeah.
like picture the page with the music written all over it. And I was just like, man, this is so cool. Like, this is
Oh,
why I love Radiolab.
I just remember like, yeah, that's the stuff they made us listen to that first year.
Hmm.
I think this is horrible. Like, it's like, it's meant to hurt you. It's just really intense, dissonant. I now like that stuff, but like, I was just like, this is horrible. And then we kind of got to minimalism and then in C,
Hmm.
which is, probably the beginning of minimalism. And I was like, oh, thank God. It was just like, so I was like, oh, I actually like, I don't have to like carve my heart out with a rusty knife in order to like this music. Like this music actually
Yeah.
speaks to me. Like it,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So, but yeah, I
I've
don't know.
tried to do something with that technique many times, but I can never pull the trigger on releasing it.
Oh, on the like the minimalist kind of marimba.
Yeah, and particularly like I've done a bunch of like the Steve Reich type of stuff, but the NC just like things coming in and out and like having like different parts that just appear nonsensically almost that
Yeah.
happen to work. Um, but I always feel like like I'm cheating or like I'm stealing that idea or something.
No, I think it's like, I mean, that idea became, I think all of electronic music is really in a way like an outgrowth of that minimalism, right? It's just
Yeah.
like, it's not even an idea anymore. It's just like a grammar. You know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah.
the thing below the idea.
Oh, real quick, I don't think we introduced you. Do we do that on this podcast?
No, he needs no introduction. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry, we're
In
30
the show
minutes in
notes,
and
it's in the title. But no,
okay. Okay, cool. Um, I was what another thing I wanted to ask you, and you've maybe mildly touched on it, but are there any projects that you just like totally abandoned out there that like you really wish had worked, but just haven't for whatever reason? And do you ever expect to resurrect any of them? And this can be any sort of project.
any projects that I've abandoned. Um, I mean, hmm, in the radio lab of it all, this would be like sort of the last 20 years. There were just tons and tons and tons of stories that I mean, sort of built into the process was always this, you're chasing 50 stories to get 10,
Hmm.
that was always the sort of math of it. And so, we'd constantly bump up against stories that just felt really exciting. And then suddenly they fell apart on you. Maybe something that turned out to be true that you thought was true wasn't, or you couldn't get access to the right person that you needed to talk to. Um, or
I bet
like,
that was such a bummer. Like you got a great story and then you
oh
just can't
yeah,
find the person to make it work.
Well, you get real. It's funny. There's a kind of like I mean, imagine it's similar with songs in a way, and that you become like a poker player in a way. You just have
Hmm.
all of these bets that you've placed, and each bet is for a little bit of money, spiritually speaking, and you're prepared to lose 75% of those bets because you know that in the law of high numbers, the 25% that will come through will make it worthwhile. And so you begin to sort of have like a Buddhistic sense of detachment to failure as a result,
Mm.
because you know that it's just built in. Um, like when I was working with reporters, the first thing I would tell them is like, don't get, like a new reporter gets so attached to this one story. And I think that's great. Like you have to have passion, but you have to also just be willing to murder that story if it's just not happening.
Hmm.
Um, because half the time it's not happening for reasons that you can't control. So you just gotta let it go. Put it on the shelf or like send it out into orbit and it'll fall to Earth at some point. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, there were constant experiences of things falling through. There were those stories. I think getting to the heart of your question, there were those stories that like, man, really, this one feels like I can't quite let it go. You
Hmm.
know, there are a lot of stories like that. I mean, and usually those stories kind of hang out in the back of your mind, and then you find a way at some point to.
Is there anything else that's still hanging out in the back of your mind that you're just have any
Well,
desire to cook back up?
not like a specific story. Um, it's more just like I. It's funny, like it's like an experiment I want to try. That grew out of my years at Radiolab. Um, it's there was a that's the funny thing about the form that we were working in, um, that sort of like not like narrative nonfiction kind of like feels like a Hollywood movie, but actually it's real sort of form. Is that there's a kind of like relentless um, propulsion to those kinds of stories, which is that you build it in such a way that it never really stops because it's always trying to seduce the person who's listening. Like at each moment, you're like, come, come, come on,
Hmm.
go over here. You know, there's like, you're always kind of just trying to sort of Pied Piper the person listening. And I always wanted to have like moments where like the music would take over for a minute. But when you're in that Pied Piper mode, the music only ever gets 6 seconds. 'Cause
Hmm.
and you're like, pull it back down. Come, come. And so I would have a constant sort of internal battle, as I was building the show. Like, can I make this music post like 11 seconds and not 6? And then at one point, I remember because so many of those early shows were finished at 4 in the morning. I remember at 4 in the morning, I was with Soren Wheeler, who's now the executive editor of Radiolab, and we were at the very final moment of the story, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put this music post for. God damn it! I'm gonna put it for 9 minutes. He's like, "You can't do that." I was like, "No, I can do it. I'm going to do it. I'm right here. Like, there's
Yeah.
no one stopping me." He's like, "No, but dude, no one's gonna listen." And I was like, "Why not?" It's like, "We just had the experience and just have 9 minutes." And after a minute, someone's gonna be like, "What's happening? Am I in the story? Am I out of the
Is it
story?
over? Where?
Is it
Yeah. Where
over?"
am
And then
I?
you go through 3 more of those questioning moments. And I was like, I just so there's a to get back to your question, I'm always the thing I really and this might actually become a project. I think it will actually. Um, I'm always like, can I make a documentary that you can dance to? It's equal parts music and equal parts
Yeah.
storytelling. With a
But not a
story,
music documentary, right?
not a music documentary, because those
Yeah. Yeah.
typically
Yeah.
kill the music in a way.
Mm.
Hmm.
But there's some way in which, in that way that I don't know, it's like I remember fuck was it? So I hear Sting's voice, like Peer Gynt. Do you remember? No.
Not ringing a
So
bell.
like it was like a Sting narrated this symphony basically, and there were these long symphonic
Oh,
passages. And
gotcha.
he came on and narrated in this very Sting voice, and then you went back to music. And there's something in the form of that which allowed you to have a long periods of music and then little periods of exposition. And I just want to make that not for orchestra though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, is there a way to completely tilt the balance? Because I do have like at the end of the day, I have like an argument with the forms we work in. You know, I mean, I think poetry is a little more forgiving in this. Certainly songs set to music are, but like when you're telling a story in a podcast or in a radio story, sometimes I feel like, man, we're doing all this monkey business to make the story have a story shape. It's
Mhm.
actually not the way the world is. Like the world is a big ass, messy splatter of shit with 14 things going in different directions. And then we somehow like draw a little like shape in the shit and say, this is what's first, and that's second, and that's third. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, it's like, and the promise of those stories is it gives a kind of order to the thing.
Mhm.
But what if the thing has a completely different, much more chaotic order? So there's a way in which part of my music argument is actually tethered to that argument. If that
Mhm.
makes any
Yeah,
sense.
totally.
So yeah, there's some way in which the story shapes sometimes get frustrating to me. Not to say I've
Mhm.
mastered them at all, like, but it's like it's just sometimes I'm like, oh man, this feels too neat or something.
Yeah, well, there's the common way that we tell stories, but then there's no real rule out there that says that is the way,
Right.
you know? I mean,
Right.
maybe like commercially, there are some rules that producers might question what you're doing. But I mean, if you can master a different way of telling the story, like which you kind of did with Radiolab. I mean, so why not do it again with music and with just turning the whole thing on its head?
Yeah. But I mean, what's your answer to your question?
It's been
What's the
like
thing?
45 minutes. What was my question? Oh, how many projects have I abandoned?
Well, no, I mean, what's the sort of white whale, you know, that you're always chasing?
Oh, uh, problem, dude. I have so many small whales. I don't know if there's a white whale, a big white whale. Um, but what? Well, before you got on, we were talking about lately. I've been um probably as an escape from finishing my actual album, just doing a lot of um instrumental stuff. Um, and I run into the problem. I love like the most formless of like Brian Eno stuff or Harold Budd stuff,
Yeah.
but it's so hard for me to make that and feel like I'm actually doing it, even though I think it sounds cool, but I think like I want to put something out there that doesn't seem like I'm faking it.
Mm,
Um, in that kind of instrumental world, that's something that just drones on and on. I mean, because for me, like I mentioned, I love just like holding a D and sitting there for 8 minutes. But there's something holding me back from thinking anybody else would like that stuff, even though I like it and I have a number of friends that are into that stuff. But for some reason, when it's me doing it, it seems fake. It's that kind of imposter syndrome thing.
mm,
Um, Maybe just, because it's a new thing to me, and it seems a little too highfalutin for me to be somebody who could master something that seems so easy, but is at the same time so complex, and
yeah.
where do you put this bloop and that bloop, or is it just all live? And I'm trying to figure out how I want to make something like that. And that's one of my small whales.
Yeah.
Um,
I like that whale.
I have a million different
Yeah.
whales. So
Well, I'll listen to
I'll send you one of my drones after
that. Yeah,
this.
please do.
Um, uh, What else is it? What's your like? Is that your white whale right now? Is the the documentary you can dance to?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I mean, it's sort of where I'm playing in the these days. I mean, I'm sort of asking. I've taken a step back and I'm trying to sort of examine the things that I was doing and the forms I was working within.
Hmm.
And one of the experiments is definitely like, can I make a documentary you could dance to? Like, is there a way in this current podcasting late stage capitalist clusterfuck that the industry is in? Can I actually make a thing like that that would be interesting to me, but not super duper alienating to people, you know?
Yeah, that's isn't that like the constant battle with being a creative is doing whatever I want, but also having people come along with me and
Right,
appreciate it.
right. I do feel like you have to make a good faith effort. I mean, and this not everyone agrees with this to bring people along and to create a bridge,
Hmm.
right? I'm certainly one of those people that like I want to try things and I want to be adventurous, but I also kind of want to like not do it by myself,
Yeah.
or for a room full of three people dressed in black, right? Like I'm not somehow down with that. So part of that's one of my little baby whales is that. But I'm also been thinking, been having more of a like a civic ethical minded inquiry about like what does it mean to tell a story in a way that would actually be useful to people. You know,
Mm.
I just
A
started
story as a tool.
yeah, a story as a tool. Like I just started teaching at Vanderbilt, and they asked me to make a podcast institute, which are two words when I put them together, it makes me kind of want to die, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I was like, there is something in the podcasting form or the radio storytelling process, I should say, that I actually find not just beautiful, but like uh, necessary to a well lived life in some way. Like you have to talk to people, you have to figure out how to make them comfortable, draw them out, explore new things, and then you take that tape and then you figure out what are the best bits and then you write around the best bits and you make meaning out of it. And then you compose it in a way that then can be presented to somebody. They feel the thing you felt. That actually feels like a profound social act in some way. So
Mm.
I believe in the making, I believe in the process of it. Somehow the objects are sometimes I don't know, like how many true crime podcasts can you listen to? Right. So there's some way in which like where the industry is going in one way, but I'm kind of thinking, I've been thinking a lot about, well, I got into this out of that public radio kind of make your local community stand taller sort of instinct,
Hmm.
right? Can I get back to that, but like real local? And so one of the classes I'm going to teach at Vanderbilt is going to be, can we create like a set of podcasts or even like a podcast platform that just operates in waiting rooms in hospitals, right? So it's like you
Mm.
go into a hospital and you're going to have some procedure done and you're scared and you have all these questions. Can I give you a thing that has, well, first of all, maybe it has some sort of Eno-esque soundscape that you can put
Yeah.
over
Music
your,
for airports.
yeah, so that it chills you out because those environments are like acoustically horrible, right?
Hmm.
And then you can listen to a series of stories that tell you a little bit about where you are and what you're going through. Maybe you're hearing from people who are a year ahead in the process. You're hearing little stories that tell you like little biographies of the people working in the hospital. Who are
Yeah.
they? I just like, oh, that's a useful story. Like that's actually like a podcast that makes someone's life better in this specific room. So I've been
So
thinking a lot
hyper
about that.
specific. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
That's so fascinating.
I don't know. In some way, like having gone broadcasting for so long, it like feels really exciting to me to go like super narrow, you know,
Hmm.
super local. So that's yeah. So that's another small whale.
Yeah.
Like,
What is there anything out there that is like seems too big to even be a whale? That like, oh, I wish I had done this 20 years ago, but at this point, like there's no way that I can be, you know, whatever or do whatever. And I don't like not in a depressing
yeah.
way, just just
I
something
mean,
like
it's
some route you wish you had taken that now at this point is kind of unrealistic.
well, it's like personally. Let's see. I wonder what can answer that at different sort of altitudes. I mean, the story. I really feel like at Radiolab we never really like did a great climate change story. You know, like I
Mm,
just kind of feel like, and climate change by its sort of very nature is really hard to storify.
Mm,
mhm.
Um, it's just sort of abstract by nature. It's like the repercussions are always like far away. It's not really like affecting
Yeah.
our life in that second, although it kind of is more and more. And
And
what's the we
how do you put that huge thing into one podcast
right,
for Radio Lab? Yeah.
exactly, and then it just feels overwhelming, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know. So there's some way in which I always felt like we wanted to address that, but we just never did in a way that was interesting or ambitious enough or something, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know that anyone really has. So that's sort of that's one
mhm.
thing. Personally, if I were to answer your question personally, what would I say? So, no, it's a good one. I guess I'm just sort of, I mean, it's one of the, I don't know. I don't know that I have a personal um, route that I wish I'd gone
Mhm.
with that. I'm sort of doing it now. Um, yeah, I don't know. Let me take I'm going to take an option out on that question, and I might
Fair
come
enough.
back.
Fair enough.
Uh, back.
Where do you think um you're obviously well, maybe it's not obvious, but to me it seems like you're a very curious person and a
Mm.
deep thinker. Where do you think that comes from and how do you stay motivated to continue to be curious and want to make a podcast for a hospital waiting room? I mean, where does do you think there's a specific place or time where that curiosity comes from at all?
Yeah, you want to know the honest answer is it's sort of it's funny. Curiosity has always been a weird word for me because I mean it was the brand, right? It was like
Mhm.
I remember one of our first taglines, "Real Lab Curiosity Bender," right? And it was this whole idea of like, let's just like, it's almost like we're gonna mainline a drug that makes you like super curious about everything. Um, and I loved that and I drove that, but on some level, I was never a curious kid, right? Um,
Mm.
I I was actually sort of the opposite of that, oddly. And I think it was, having been this immigrant kid coming to a place that was a little bit unfriendly, a little bit. And you just sort of walk into rooms and you're always being really watchful. And you have all of these questions about what's happening, but you learn to suppress those questions, you know?
Yeah. You don't feel
And
comfortable asking them.
yeah, you don't feel comfortable. And then um, that instinct to not ask the question becomes almost reflexive and you don't even notice it. And I think I had gotten to a point, um, I don't know, high school, somewhere around there, where I just wasn't asking any of those questions. And the interesting thing that happened, fast forwarding now, when I got into, I started volunteering at a radio station, uh, is that I remember they gave me a microphone and they were just like, go out and cover this protest. And I just remember going to the protest, and then there I was, with the mic, and I was like, what even is a question that you ask? Like, like just didn't, I wasn't filled with questions. I had like one question, right?
Hmm.
But what would happen is I would do an interview, and then I would go back to the radio station, and listen to the interview. And I found, not in the moment of the interview, but actually listening to the interview, I would be like furious with my past self. Be like, dude, why didn't you ask? Like, she said that thing. Why didn't you follow up with a question? And I just started writing those questions down in the margins. Like, oh,
Mm.
I need to call her back up and say, I forgot to ask you this, 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 and this. And that practice of like listening back to an interview and realizing all the questions I didn't ask actually awakened something in me. And I realized, actually, my God, there's so many questions that you can ask. And it became kind of a habit, like practice. And in that way, I became the thing that eventually we talked about and built the show around. Uh,
Yeah. So kind of a learned
it
curiosity.
was a
That's,
learned curiosity,
yeah,
right? And
so
maybe it was
interesting.
innate, but I had to relearn it in some
Mhm.
way. And I still feel, it's one of the things I'm most grateful for, in having somehow wandered to this life path, because you have a mic. And I'm actually a pretty shy person, and I am happy to spend weeks, months by myself. So I will retreat back into that place, right? But then if you have a mic, you have an instant icebreaker. You can walk into a place, and you can, I'm sure, Jack knows this quite well. He's just like, you have a ready-made excuse to talk to people who you find interesting. And, and sometimes like that makes all the difference, right? Just having that.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I feel very grateful for that. But it was innate, but it was unlearned and then relearned, and then continually renewed every time I'd.
Hmm. Man, that's fascinating. I love that answer. We're kind of running out of time. I want to stay true to what we agreed upon. I do have a series of questions that I've compiled from some of my friends. And if you could just answer them off the top of your dome,
Mhm.
and you can feel free to pass if you can't think of
Sure, like
anything.
just like free associative kind of thing.
Yeah, just the first thing that pops into your mind. You don't have to think about it too hard.
Sure.
Um, but was there a show that inspired you to make Radiolab, or was it the absence of a show like Radiolab that spurred you on to create it?
It was a lot of different things. It was This American Life, like the
I'll have to write
moment,
that one down.
uh, the moment in This American Life where like the music posts. I was
Mhm.
just so addicted to those moments. It was also, though, like an old series on NPR called Lost and Found Sound. I remember hearing a few of those driving through the dead of night in Ohio and just being like, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that." But it was also, some of the weird music that I was learning about at film school, and I was like, could the journalism and the weird sounds be friends? Could they have a and so it was that. It was a lot of different things coming together, um, that inspired me to wanna do that. And there was some sense that there was a space next to the journalists, next to the, like, capital J journalists,
Mhm.
where that would be my space. A
Yeah.
little bit like where the weirdos hang out, but who also kinda wanna, like, you know, listen to journalists talk. So it was something
Yeah.
like it was in that space.
Okay, nice.
Sorry, that
Um,
wasn't a free associative answer. That was.
no, that's great.
I'll be
Trying to look.
shorter.
Oh, no, that's just be as long as you need. I'm looking, some of these you've kind of touched on already. Um, do you still listen to Radiolab, and is it fun for you?
I don't listen to it. No. I'm I trying to get to a place where I can hear it again and hear it, because I handed it to some people who are supremely talented, and I just want them to take it and
Yeah.
do their thing. And I could feel sometimes when I talk to them that they feel not a prison, but they feel like this obligation to keep this thing sounding and doing the thing it always did, when I think they should take it in a whole new direction. But in order
Yeah.
for them to do that, I have to step way, way back. And I also have to do that in my own psyche in a way. So I can
Yeah.
hear what they're doing and honor that for what it is, rather than hear it against what I would have done, what it
Yeah.
was.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Who was your biggest competition in podcast?
Oh man, there's so many. I was like, first it was This American Life. I mean, it was not even really a competition. They were always just like it's this amazing city on the hill, and we were always like trying to climb up. But they were always this competition in that like they just seemed to do things so much more easily. Like things
Mm,
that felt so hard for us, where we do 60 drafts. I would just imagine they would do it in 5. I don't even know if that's true or
probably
not.
not.
But, like, they just seemed so like the adults, and we were the
Hmm.
idiot children, right? Trying to be the adults. But also, I mean, after a while, like, when it became a big podcast, we would just compete with uh,
Yeah.
whoever was getting a lot of audience, which unfortunately then became the Joe Rogans and the, like, chatty chat shows of the
Mm,
world,
yeah.
of which there are too many to mention. Um, but yeah, it's just, I sort of loved and wanted to destroy them all, right?
Yeah.
Kinda had that at the same
Keep trying.
time. Yeah.
um, okay. When did you first start finding yourself like interacting with creativity, music in music or audio form?
Yeah, man, as long as I can remember, you know? I guess I've been playing music my whole life. And like you were saying earlier, it always felt like the thing I wanted to do is to write my own stuff, make my own stuff.
Hmm.
And that goes back as long as I can remember. I remember when I was in 8th grade, I had a 4-track cassette recorder and I had like
Yeah.
2 synthesizers. And I would just I would like mix between them with the volume knobs onto 4 tracks, bounce it down to 1, keep doing it, bounce it down to 1, and keep doing it.
Yeah.
All the tracks would start to bleed over. And it's just like that was my whole high school. Like I didn't really
Mhm.
have any friends in high school, but it was okay. I didn't like it. Just had I had this 4-track cassette recorder.
Yeah. Do they still
Um,
make those tapes? I remember
they do,
you could get
yeah,
them at radio. You could get them at Radio Shack, and that was like
yeah.
the only place I would get them.
I thought about ordering a 4-track on eBay because they're floating around. And
They're coming
it's like
back too. A lot of people are doing like some really cool stuff
yeah,
and like
that kind of
slowing
like
them down and
fluttery
pulling out the
thing.
tapes and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, the creative the that part of it has always been there. I think I just discovered storytelling like late, like actually like writing stories, telling
Hmm.
stories. That was kind of high school, end of high school, college. I just
Yeah.
started doing that, and then I realized that that's actually like music. I think the two kind of met in a really interesting place.
Mhm. Cool. And last question. Um, would you rather have fists the size of nostrils or nostrils the size of fists?
Fists the size of nostrils, little baby fists. Nostrils the size of fists. I think I'd go with that. Nostrils the size of
Nostrils the
fists.
size of fists.
Because then you'd be
Okay.
like, you'd be taking in so much oxygen.
That's true.
Y-
Yeah.
You know, you know what I learned yesterday? Speaking of oxygen, is that when you breathe in, so you have two. See, this will explain why I think nostrils the size of fists is better than first.
Okay.
So you have two different um, nervous systems. You have the autonomic and the sympathetic, parasympathetic. I forget the labels, but basically, one is the one that gets you ready for action, and one is the one that chills you out. Um,
Hmm.
when you breathe in, you activate one, and when you breathe out, you activate the other. Uh, and so, like you breathe in, you get a little
Interesting.
hit of adrenaline, which activates the sympathetic, I believe, and then when you breathe out, it sort of soothes you, and then activates the parasympathetic, and they're always in this kind of oscillation. And it has to do very much with like intake and exhale of oxygen. And
Yeah.
so, if you can breathe in, like imagine the hit, like if you had this size nostril, imagine the hit of adrenaline that would be going to your heart. And then when you breathe out, imagine just deep calm that would radiate through you. Um, so yeah, that's why.
Wow. I almost didn't ask that question, but I'm so glad I did. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jad. This was a fascinating uh, time for me to get to talk to you, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity and for honor. I mean, I'm honored to take part and to be a part of your creative journey. That's really cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to go away now and do this, make the third thing. I heard that from your TED talk, and
Yeah.
we have to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
make a song inspired by this. Do you have any directions to push us in, or any you?
No, no, I wouldn't want to put my thumb on the scale in any way. I mean, I've heard your music, and I think it's great. And if you want to do the D held thing, that baby
Yeah,
whale
maybe
might be a
so.
good time to do it. Given
Maybe
Nice
given,
minute
so.
instrumental. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but whatever just occurs to you, whatever moves you, whatever idea
Awesome.
stays with you.
Great. Well,
We'll
thank you
do
so
it.
much.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you, Jack, for sticking with us and get me to do it. I appreciate you.
No worries. My pleasure.
All right, guys. Good luck. Keep me
All right.
posted.
Thank you. All right,
Will
we'll
do.
do.
Okay. Bye.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Well
Man,
done.
that was great.
Yeah,
You really just went with it, didn't he?
he did. Yeah, that was a real great flowing conversation. Yeah, you're a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you. It's that last question. I was asking my
It's
wife
funny.
yesterday, and she told me that, and she's gonna be so mad that I actually asked him. But I feel he gave such a great. That was probably the best answer of all those questions. It was so
Yeah, yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. Yeah, he's got so much
So
to draw on. Yeah,
yeah,
I feel my. Almost have this. I have enormous nostrils, so I do.
not quite fist size.
Not quite a fist size.
Sorry
Yeah.
if that was a triggering question for you.
No, no. I'm not. It's a podcast. Yeah. So you inspired for a song then?
Yeah, there was a couple things that he mentioned that I was like, man, I could run with that. Um, and I'll definitely whenever you send me the recording, I'll go back and make
Hmm.
some notes and try and figure out what we can do um,
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Shapes in the
excited.
ship. Shapes in the
Yeah,
ship could be a good song title.
yeah, yeah. He definitely
No,
said some good stuff for sure.
he's really a giant of the podcast world, and he must have the bar so high because he, did that. Such a great run with Radiolab, and then afterwards with Dolly Parton. He seems like he's looking for, and he almost has to reinvent the formula of the form every time. They'll come up with a new formula.
Yeah,
Some,
yeah. He has a couple other podcast series that he's done too that are also just really great. Yeah, it sounds like I'm interested to hear what's next because it sounds like he does want to just
mm,
kind of turn it all on its head
yeah,
and see what
'cause
happens. And
people
if there's
expect that,
anybody that can do it, it's him.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
already done
It's
it.
like,
So
yeah, it's like he must. I hope he look down on us conversation podcasts because we're really we're really the bottom of the barrel, banging them
no,
out. But
I think this one's different. This one's different for sure.
well, I like to think so, but it did make me chuckle when he said
Well,
that. Yeah.
maybe we can get him to edit this episode.
Oh, you mean put a sound underneath it? Yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah, add
Yeah,
some blips and bloops to this one.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're all made by our formula. Obviously, he had this amazing education at this university where he went to, where
Hmm.
he had the grounding in it. So obviously you're going in that direction, but for me to come in that way and start adding in sounds and making a polish, I just don't come from that school. I don't have.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I wanted to ask him what his current favorite podcast was. What's yours? I'll ask you instead. I'm
Um,
equally as excited to hear your answer.
I listened to the Mystic The Mystic Art's my other podcast, but I listen to the Spiritual Freedom Show, which is I'm a member of this spiritual organization called the Ethereal Society. So everything I listen to is based on that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So I'd love to get a link for that.
Yeah, sure. I'll send it. Yeah. It's spirituality and yoga.
Oh,
It's a real
cool.
mix. Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm really into everything I listen to outside of when I'm not researching
Hmm.
the guests or listening to your music or listening to jazz. I top up with that stuff.
Oh, cool. That kind of what fills your cup.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
And you?
Um, there's this one podcast called Love and Radio
Mhm.
that is just like it's kind of in the same form loosely as Radiolab. There's a lot of like sound effects and things and weird edits. But they interview just like the most outside of the box people, and
Mhm.
it's oftentimes kind of dark. Um, there's one where they're interviewing this transhumanist that's like trying to turn himself into a like cybernetic human. And there's one where they're interviewing, I'm kind of giving it away, but they're interviewing this guy who's married to two like inflatable women. But you don't learn that until the very end. So you think you're just and they have actors play his wife and girlfriend, and it's all real stuff. And there's this one where they're interviewing this guy who his partner's mind also lives in his body, and just like stuff that you would never like
Mm.
think about or hear about anywhere else. And it's always really fascinating. They interviewed like this guy that owns a morgue, and like just all these kind of like
Mm.
really interesting stories that are a little too outside of the commercial box. I think that's always like really fascinating.
Mm. Yeah, it's another formula. Yeah, I mean, then
Yeah.
once you go in that vein, people start to contact you with these stories. Hey, you should do one on this guy. You should.
Yeah.
My cousin lives with these inflatable women. You should.
Yeah. That one was crazy because you have no idea until the very end. And then
Wow.
like, you're like, oh, so he has a wife and one, but then it's like, no, they're both it's like, oh man, it's pretty wild.
And do you
But
still
that
listen?
one's really good.
Do you still listen to Radiolab?
Yeah, I do listen to Radiolab still, not as often as I used to. I mean, I don't have like
You're not
as
in a
much
you're not in a
time.
car. Yeah,
I'm
you're
not
not
in a
in
van
a
for
van.
8 hours a day. Um, but I still listen to it and still love it. It's still great. And I was just thinking actually, last night I listened to one of these really old ones, and I was kind of thinking, you know what, there's no rule against starting over and listening again,
No,
you
no.
know. So I might do that, especially after, talking to Jad. It was uh, reminded me of so many great episodes that I would love to listen to
Yeah,
again.
brings it all closer to
So,
home. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Great.
So what's next
Brilliant.
step? We just we email about the song and
Yeah, let's send out some ideas back and forth and see what comes up, and then we can collaborate on WhatsApp and send back stuff, and then yeah, eventually, as if the song miraculously appears in a few seconds, but yeah, it
Mhm.
could take us. It's going to take us months here. So,
Sounds good.
all right, mate.
Whoa, thank you again so much. This was a real pleasure and an honor to get to be part of this.
My pleasure.
All right. I'll
Take
be
care,
in
mate.
touch.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.
It's when I toss and turn at night and wonder, will you be alright? 'Cause I don't have the answers, much less the questions. 'Cause this is a one-way conversation. This is a one-way conversation. Man, I know you've been let down, even when you're not around. I can hear your voice tremble like it's hiding in a ghost town. Man, I wish we had more time and a little peace of mind. 'Cause I don't have the answers, much less the questions. 'Cause this is a one-way conversation. This is a one-way conversation. This is a one-way and I don't have the answers, much less the questions.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the song and the episode. The song will be released next week. It will be available on all streaming platforms, but you can already pre-save. Please support the artists by following them on social media and adding the song to any playlists you have. This is a completely free show, and you've listened this far, so I'd really appreciate it if you could pay us back by clicking like and subscribe. And follow at Podsongs on social media platforms, or subscribe to the newsletter at podsongs.com for special updates. Or just tell the next person you see about this amazing show where musicians interview their idols and write a song about them. The songs are available for download from the Podsongs website as well, which pays a lot more than the 0.00 whatever we get from Spotify. You can also email me at jack@podsongs.com to give feedback, suggest an artist and guest combos you'd like to hear, or just say hello. We're a listener-supported show, and I'd love to hear from you. A final thanks to my researchers, Dori Verbo and Rosa Marino, my producer, Maurizio Sanicola of Goldmine Records, and musicians Massimino Vozza and Luigi Falcione. The next episode will be out soon. In the meantime, you can listen to more amazing episodes in the archives. Until then, have a great day.